Vicki Breese-Iverson is the Republican leader in the House. I interviewed her in her legislative office. House Republican Leader Vicki Breese-Iverson, thank you for coming on Your Voice, Your Vote. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about, you've been in House leadership along with Dan Rayfield since last year, but there's been some changes. And you got a new governor, new Senate president, some new members in the House and Senate. How will all this change impact what's going on in the upcoming legislative session?
We are about to find out. Yeah. The reality of what we're looking at is so many new members. And when we talk about the new members, we're not just talking about the 21 freshman House members that we installed just last week, but we're also have to look at the fact that there is a large number of them that are our sophomore class of House members who have never done this session in person, live in committee hearing, on the floor all together with a 30-second voting time frame. We've had all these COVID rules for 2 years, so it's been a different set of rules and a different atmosphere here. And there's a big learning curve in front of us, so hopefully we will walk through it together with some ease.
Let's talk about some of the top priorities for House Republicans this session. Tell me about that.
Priorities for Republicans, obviously, we have said before, and we stand by the collaboration across the building and even with the governor, that we need to talk about housing and homelessness in Oregon. We definitely have a problem. There's different ways to approach that problem. We hope that we're part of that conversation and that our voice is heard. We are still in a minority, but we're not in a super minority anymore, and that makes a difference.
Let's talk about the fact, because Democrats say housing and homelessness is big for them. Are you two on the same page when it comes to that? And is that the only issue you're on the same page with them?
I would always say the devil's in the details. So we will find out if we're on the same page as we get into those details. But at this moment, at this time, we both identify the problem. We understand what it is that we need to do to move forward. And I think we're going to find some good conversation and some good compromise as we go through this session.
You do see some compromise coming?
I have high hopes that the conversations I've had thus far with the Speaker are reality.
Wow. Let's talk about the governor's housing homelessness plan. She's talked about $130 million she needs for that. Do you see you being on board with that?
I have some questions that I need answered to be on board on that one.
What questions would you need answered in that?
What I heard in her speech when she was sworn in was a number and a dollar number that she was looking at, but it was attached to about 1,200 people from what I heard. And I question how many dollars we're spending per person and how that looks across the state for each community, because each community is going to use those dollars differently. There's different resources available in the different communities. There's different partnerships available in the different communities. We've got to look at this from a local perspective and see what is available in those smaller communities and how can we lean into that.
Because you talked about fiscal responsibility as
Yes.
a priority, so how will that impact this $130 million?
Greatly, and that is why I have questions and why I say the devil's in the details for this one. We've got to make sure that those dollars are spent equally across the state and that we're looking at, again, the resources and the partnerships available in each of those communities. It's important. Oregon it's a diverse state, and we've got to realize that, and we've got to use the resources in the different corners of the state that are available.
What ideas do House Republicans have to fix the homelessness housing crisis right now?
We'd like to make sure that we're talking about sheltering. Of course, we want to make sure that there are places available for people to go. But we also want to look at this from a perspective of how do we help these folks get a hand up in life? How do we help them be successful? Not just give them put them into a project, or not a project, but a program that gives them an immediate need. We need to look at long term. How do we make these folks successful in life and in our state and incorporate them into our communities that way?
Let's talk about behavioral health. What do you think is the best way to address that issue right now?
Again, I think we have to look at the local level. We have to see what's available in each community. Again, Portland Metro has a large different number of programs available than Central Oregon and Prineville, where I'm from. Doesn't mean that we don't have good programs and we don't have good people in the community that can help solve our problems, but it's going to look different.
Let's talk about job creation in Oregon. What can we expect from House Republicans when it comes to bringing more high-paying jobs to this state?
House Republicans are all about economic development, and we'd like to see that in every corner of our state, not just in some specific areas. So I think we need to look at what it is that attracts those businesses into Oregon. My community, we did well bringing in a couple of data centers, and that was based on the ability to provide a credit for them to be able to move into our community. And we need tools like that that we can utilize around the state to attract businesses.
You're from rural Oregon. What legislation do you think is needed to protect the folks in rural Oregon?
I think it's all about local control. We need to let our communities be what they're going to be. If my community, which is a small community in Central Oregon, wants to remain small, they should have the ability to maneuver into what works for them. Is that land use? Is that how their school district's set up? It's across the board. We need to get back to local controls. The thing that we've seen in the last several cycles through this building is a statewide approach to policy, and that doesn't work in Oregon. Oregon is diverse. We need to be able to address and lean into each of those communities, big or small.
Do you see Democrat support in that at all?
I invite the Democrats that question it or that have questions about my comment to come to Prineville and let me introduce you to what small town looks like and how it is that we take care of our community.
And the folks in Prineville and some of these rural communities, did they say the same? Do they want that local control and
yes,
kind of keep the state out of it?
Yes. It's called traditional Oregon. Traditional Oregon is, if you look back in Oregon's history, it's a history rich of community taking care of themselves and each other. And if we give those communities that ability, they will do it. They will lean into their community members. They'll take care of each other. They'll support each other. And that's the thing that's what built Oregon, and we shouldn't walk away from that.
What else would you like our viewers to know that you folks are working on right now in this session?
Well, we're working on making sure that our voice is heard. As the simple minority, we have to still work very hard to make sure that people are hearing what it is that we're bringing to the table. So that is probably our largest challenge in front of us at the moment. There's a mentality in this building and that the Republicans have been in a super minority for so long that they haven't needed to be listened to.
And do you think now that that's not the case, there's no longer the super majority, that maybe your voice is a little louder now? Do you feel that at all?
Yes. And I might be not very tall in stature, but you can ask my kids. I've got a loud voice.
Let's talk about bipartisanship in this session. Is that a reality? And because so often we hear at the beginning of a session that this is going to be, boy, we're going to see these two sides work together. And somewhere along the way, it just doesn't seem to happen. Do you see this carrying through the session?
I do think that there is a different feeling and atmosphere inside the building at this time, and I am hopeful, and I believe that the speaker is also hopeful that we can continue this conversation, collaboration, as we move through session. Again, hindsight's going to be the real telltale on that, right? Mm-hmm. But I think if we're both acknowledging that up front and we continue to look for the ways and the reasons to have the conversation and look for the ways to collaborate as we move through some of these tough issues, we can make it a better session.
Because you guys are going to duke it out along the way, you know that.
It is the nature of this building. Mm-hmm. But I think that if we're cognizant of that as we walk through that process, we can do a better job.
Your number one goal in this session, what would it be?
Get to the end of June.
One piece of legislation that maybe you're hoping to get through and make happen before it's all done?
At this time, it's a little early in the process to pick one piece of legislation that is the top priority for our caucus or for me personally. There is a number of things in front of us that are really important. But I think that if we look at all of this legislation in front of us and we remember that we should do no harm, we'll do all right.
House Republican Leader Breese-Iverson, thank you very much for your time.